Assalamu alaikum, and welcome back to our channel, Pakistan Zindabad, the next world superpower.
It's great to be back.
Today, we have a really fascinating subject. It's something that forms the very foundation of global power projection, but it's one of those things that rarely, if ever, captures the headlines.
The unseen architecture.
Exactly. We're talking about strategic logistics and mobility. And for this deep dive, we're looking at episode 29 of the book, The Nuclear Umbrella, which was written by Mr. Zahir Ahmad Mir.
Mm-hmm.
This specific section really zeroes in on the architecture required to turn military ambition into actual on-the-ground reality.
And it is an excellent choice for a deep dive. It really is. Because it moves the conversation away from all the shiny hardware,
Right, the jets and the missiles.
Jets, the missiles, all the things that get the attention. And it focuses entirely on what you could call the nervous system of military capability.
That's a great way to put it.
The sources are claiming that we are about to unpack the design for what would be, and this is a huge claim, the world's largest unified mobility network.
Spanning 3 continents.
3 continents. It's an incredible scope.
And that is precisely our mission today.
Yeah.
We are analyzing the core engine of this entire strategic vision, which is the blueprint for the strategic logistics grid, or the SLG as they call it.
Right.
Now, if this system works as advertised, it will basically be a shortcut to rapid deployment and continuous supply across a massive, massive geographic area. We're talking Africa, the Middle East, Central Asia, South Asia, and all the way to Southeast Asia.
It's a huge footprint.
It is. The goal is, well, it's simple, but at the same time, it's incredibly radical. We want to understand how this coalition proposes to move, sustain, and supply forces quickly enough to fundamentally change the entire dynamic of global military power.
And to really grasp the ambition of something like the SLG, you have to internalize this foundational truth that the source material establishes right up front.
Which is?
Logistics is destiny.
Logistics is destiny.
And that's not just rhetoric. The source frames it as a historical law. Armies, across centuries, they rarely fall just because they ran into a brave opponent. They collapse.
They just fall apart.
They fall apart when their supply lines are broken, when the last fuel barrel is empty, or, and this is a key one, when the troops run out of warm clothes in a winter campaign.
So this blueprint is really about mastering that silent power. The power that, as the source says, decides victory before the first shot is even fired.
Exactly. Before anything even happens.
And when you look at the historical failures that are cited in the source, the pattern is just staggering. It validates that thesis immediately.
It really does.
Take Napoleon's push into Russia back in 1812. His army, the Grande Armée, it was arguably the finest fighting force in Europe at the time.
Unbeatable, people thought.
Right. And yet it was ultimately defeated not by a single massive pitched battle, but by distance. It was defeated by logistics.
The supply lines just stretched too thin.
Exactly. As those lines stretched thin and that famous Russian winter set in, the lack of consistent food, fodder for the horses, and crucially, winter clothing, it killed and incapacitated far more soldiers and horses than enemy muskets ever did.
The logistical capacity just couldn't keep up. The operational tempo, the speed of the army, outran its own ability to supply itself.
And that same crippling flaw, it just reappears over a century later with Hitler's invasion of the Soviet Union.
Operation Barbarossa.
The source highlights that the speed of the initial blitzkrieg, while it was tactically stunning, it created an immediate and completely unsustainable logistical tail.
So as the Wehrmacht got closer to Moscow, the fundamental challenge wasn't some kind of superior Soviet fighting force, not at that early stage.
Yeah.
It was inadequate railways, it was incompatible rail gauges between the territories they'd occupied, it was fuel lines freezing in the cold, and a massive, massive shortfall in spare parts for vehicles that were operating in extreme conditions they weren't designed for.
The military machine just stalled.
It choked. The supply machine choked, and so the military machine stalled. It's a direct cause and effect.
And you see that same thread running right through the 20th and even into the 21st centuries. You look at modern, high-tech armies in conflicts like Vietnam or Afghanistan, or even the initial phase of the Iraq War. They may have superior weaponry, but if you can't sustainably connect that frontline fire base to the staging area that's thousands of miles away, if every single movement is a logistical nightmare.
Then that technological edge is just nullified. It's canceled out by what they call the tyranny of distance and terrain.
And it forces commanders to make bad decisions.
It does. It forces them to make operational decisions based on, say, fuel reserves or ammunition counts rather than on what is strategically necessary to win.
And the most recent and really stark reminder of this, which the source implicitly references, is that early phase of the Ukraine conflict.
The convoy outside Kiev.
Exactly. Huge armored columns just stalled on the roads. And not because of some overwhelming resistance, but because of basic things. Poor field maintenance, inadequate fuel planning, and a lack of recovery vehicles to pull broken-down trucks out of the way.
So in modern warfare, the moment your engine stops, your entire tactical plan is compromised. It's over.
The whole thing just grinds to a halt.
So the core thesis here, what this all boils down to, is that mobility and sustainable supply chains, they are the absolute prerequisites for projecting power.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you have tech parity or even tech superiority. If you can't move, you can't fight.
I understand the intent completely now. So the blueprint's core thesis is clear. The strategic logistics grid, this SLG, is designed to be the architectural counter-argument to every single one of those historical failures.
That's a good way to put it.
It's a massive investment in minimizing the time and the space between supply and demand. It's about ensuring that forces can respond in hours, not weeks.
Making geography irrelevant.
Exactly. Making geography irrelevant. It's about building a system that is fundamentally resilient to all the issues that destroyed these massive armies, from Napoleon all the way to the present day.
An antidote to history, in a way.
Okay, so let's unpack this blueprint's assessment of the absolute requirements of war, because this is where the SLG really starts to get granular and honestly very interesting.
Right.
When we talk about sustaining forces, the source moves beyond the big flashy supplies and dives into the real minutiae that determine whether an operation succeeds or fails.
It does. The source provides a remarkably detailed list, and it emphasizes that logistics isn't about one giant pipeline. That's not how it works. It's about countless interdependent micropipelines.
What are we talking about here?
Well, you need a continuous, reliable supply of the core combat resources. That's the obvious stuff: fuel, ammunition, food, and purified water. But the often forgotten elements, those are the true measure of whether you can sustain an operation.
Right, the hidden essentials that can cause a rapid collapse if you forget them.
Exactly. We're talking about sophisticated spare parts for specialized vehicles and aircraft. Think about the O-rings, the circuit boards, the replacement hydraulics for a tank turret.
Things you can't just pick up at a local shop.
Not at all. Then there's medicine and trauma kits, which are crucial for keeping a fighting force operational. And then specialized survival gear, like winter clothing, which has to be suitable for a huge range of climates, from, say, the African desert to the mountains in Central Asia.
And critically, the people, the specialized human capital.
Yes. The source really emphasizes this. You can have the most advanced equipment in the world, but if you don't have the specialized personnel, the engineers, the mechanics, the communications technicians to maintain it and repair it in a forward operating environment,
This becomes a very expensive piece of junk.
it grinds to a halt. The entire deployment stops. If you miss one category on that list, if you have enough fuel but no one to fix a broken axle in the middle of a desert, that whole unit is immobilized and it becomes a target.
And the speed requirement, as you mentioned earlier, is paramount. Armies have to be able to deploy quickly across oceans, deserts, mountains.
Which brings us directly to the foundational problem that the SLG is trying to solve.
The historical pattern.
The historical pattern of fragmented infrastructure that is currently plaguing coordination among many of the nations in this proposed alliance.
So what does that fragmentation actually look like on the ground?
The sources synthesize several critical weaknesses that currently inhibit any kind of rapid joint action. And the dependence on foreign supply lines is probably the most immediate strategic vulnerability.
So you're relying on someone else's goodwill.
You are. Reliance on external suppliers means reliance on external goodwill, and that goodwill can evaporate the moment a crisis escalates.
We've seen this happen in the past. If a global power can simply shut down your maritime logistics chain, either by blockading a port or interdicting your vessels at sea,
Your forces are cut off instantly. The sources note that right now, armies in this region cannot deploy quickly. Equipment arrives late, which is the very definition of a failed strategic response when time is the most critical factor.
And that delayed response is deeply connected to this fragmentation problem you mentioned.
It is. I mean, imagine trying to coordinate a massive multinational joint military maneuver today. The source states that response times are slowed by weeks.
Weeks.
Weeks. And the reason for that is both bureaucratic and infrastructural. Each state maintains its own separate proprietary logistics system. They have different doctrines, different procurement methods, different internal timetables. Nothing matches up.
And that's the absolute crux of the interoperability challenge, isn't it?
It is. There's no unified transport network currently in place. So if, for instance, a Turkish mechanized brigade needs to move heavy armor across North Africa for a joint operation,
They had to navigate, what, 3, 4 different national rail and road systems?
at least, and they're often non-standardized. Then you have to add to this the deep technical incompatibility issues. The source points out the varying standards for military vehicles and, even more fundamentally, different fuel standards.
So one country's truck literally can't refuel at another's depot?
Not easily. Not without specialized adapters that often don't exist, or because they use different grades of petroleum. This incompatibility, it acts like a slow-motion blockade across what should be Allied territory.
And it goes even further than just the physical assets, right? The source highlights the lack of shared storage facilities.
And, crucially, the absence of a multinational supply unit doctrine. This means that if, say, Pakistan needs specialized winter kits immediately in Central Asia, they can't just draw them from a standardized pre-stocked hub that's managed by, let's say, a Saudi or UAE logistics team under some unified structure.
So every single deployment requires reinventing the supply wheel.
You have to reinvent the wheel every single time. And we also see the absence of a shared maritime troop movement doctrine. Moving thousands of troops and their heavy equipment across vast bodies of water, like the Indian Ocean or the Mediterranean, that requires specialized joint command structures,
Shared communication protocols.
standardized loading and unloading procedures. And these traditionally have not been unified. That alone adds days, sometimes weeks, just to the mobilization phase.
So the SLG is essentially trying to build that unified logistical DNA from scratch.
From scratch. The entire aim is to reduce that response time from weeks down to mere hours by mandating standardization and shared physical infrastructure across 3 continents. It is a massive architectural solution to fragmentation.
So we move from this deeply rooted problem of fragmentation and slow response to the incredibly ambitious solution, the strategic logistics grid itself, the SLG.
The solution.
This is the blueprint for creating a self-sustaining tricontinental network. Let's start with the anchors of this system, what they call the strategic supply hubs, or SSHs.
The SSHs are the central global stockpiles. You should think of them as massive, hardened, and very strategically located warehouses and distribution centers. They're designed to keep the entire system running, even under extreme duress.
And the source explicitly mentions their design goal is to sustain forces even during blockades.
Right. Which means they have to hold enough inventory to operate independently for extended periods of time. They have to be self-sufficient.
And their strategic placement seems absolutely key to covering this vast expanse. The source details some really powerful locations. You have Karachi and Gwadar in South Asia.
Which are critical ports for linking into Central Asia and the Indian Ocean.
Right. Then you have Istanbul in the west, which bridges Europe and Asia. Then Jeddah, Riyadh, and Abu Dhabi securing the core Gulf supply lines. These are sort of the immediate regional anchors.
But the tricontinental reach is what's really confirmed by the inclusion of Cairo in North Africa. And then you have Oran and Dakar, which are specifically chosen to anchor the crucial Atlantic side of the continent.
And what's fascinating here is the inclusion of Kuala Lumpur and Jakarta in Southeast Asia.
It's a huge extension.
It extends the SLG's reach from the Atlantic coast of Africa through the Middle East all the way to the Pacific Rim. It makes it a truly global, self-contained network.
And these hubs aren't just, storing pallets of bottled water and MREs.
No, the inventory list the source provides is exhaustive. It really speaks to the requirements of high-intensity modern warfare. They are stocking massive reserves of ammunition, bulk fuel reserves, rations designed for extended campaigns,
Specialized medical kits.
and crucially, an immense stock of standardized spare parts.
And that standardization of spare parts is such a critical operational detail. It means that while member nations might still operate some incompatible equipment in the short term, the central logistics system provides common maintenance components. It helps bridge that gap until full equipment standardization can be achieved.
And they even mentioned drone supplies.
Yes, the inclusion of dedicated drone supplies, we're talking batteries, replacement rotors, communication links, that indicates the alliance is planning for very modern, very asymmetric style of warfare. A focus on persistent, low-cost intelligence and strike operations.
This level of forward positioning, it just represents a significant strategic shift. You don't want to be sourcing fuel or spare parts when the crisis hits. You need them staged and ready.
And that staging is amplified even further by the next component in the grid.
Which is the pre-positioned equipment zones, or PPZs.
The PPZs are where efficiency translates directly into strategic superiority. These zones aren't just for stocking general supplies, they are for storing the heavy equipment itself.
The actual hardware.
The actual hardware. Tanks, armored carriers, self-propelled artillery, air defense batteries, and even naval equipment. All of it ready to roll out at a moment's notice near potential trouble spots.
So this completely eliminates the weeks that are currently spent loading heavy equipment onto cargo ships or waiting for massive strategic lift airframes to transport, say, armored carriers across half the globe.
That's the goal. The source emphasizes that the goal is to store the equipment exactly where it might be needed, which minimizes the distance between the weapon and the target.
And the geographic examples in the source really illustrate this.
They do. Let's use them to illustrate this efficiency gain. If a crisis erupts in, say, Central or Eastern Africa, the PPEZs in Egypt and Algeria are immediately activated.
So those forces can deploy heavy armor instantly.
Instantly, they completely bypass the traditional mobilization time.
And what if the issue is in South Asia?
Then the source says Pakistan deploys instantly, relying on its own PPEZs and the SSHs in Karachi and Gwadar. This ability to deploy decisive force so rapidly, in theory at least, it shaves days off that critical window of response.
And that's often the difference between managing a crisis and completely losing control of it.
It's a vast distributed arsenal that's designed for instantaneous deployment.
But such a high level of pre-positioning and rapid deployment, it demands absolute resource security.
It does. And that's where the Unified Fuel Network, the UFN, steps in. This is far more than just a convenience. It is a foundational pillar of strategic independence for the entire alliance.
It's a critical question raised by the source material, isn't it? What happens if the alliance has the best tanks and the fastest planes, but the fuel that powers them is under external control? Or worse, it's incompatible.
Right. And the UFN provides the answer by mandating one standardized fuel grade across the entire tricontinental network.
That seems like an immense, incredibly complex project.
It is. Standardizing around a universal military jet fuel, probably a version of a JP-8 equivalent, it requires every contributing nation's refinery and storage facility to conform to a single specification.
That's not trivial. That involves massive infrastructural overhauls.
Procurement harmonization, rigorous quality control across dozens of operational sites. But the payoff is strategic. Any vehicle, any aircraft, anywhere in the grid can refuel instantly. No questions asked.
And then there's the supply chain itself, the integrated Muslim fuel supply chain,
which is designed to eliminate dependence on outside forces or vulnerable global choke points. The source traces the key routes. You have the Gulf nations supplying the SSHs in Pakistan, Turkey, and across Africa.
And Malaysia supplying Indonesia.
Exactly. This establishes a kind of internal supply sovereignty. It insulates the alliance from external sanctions or any kind of interdiction.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, the UFN transforms what is currently a potential weakness, that reliance on global shipping lanes that are often monitored or controlled by external powers, into a self-contained strength.
By standardizing one fuel grade and controlling the distribution from the source, which is the Gulf, to the theater, which could be Turkey, Africa, or Asia, the alliance becomes supply secure. It's secure against any external blockade attempts that are aimed at energy denial.
So logistics in this configuration becomes a strategic shield.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
Okay, so supply is meaningless without mobility. And the sheer scale of the mobility assets described in the source is, it's frankly staggering. Let's talk about the Muslim Air Mobility Command, or MAMC, the Airlift Corps.
The MAMC is really the epitome of resource pooling to create a kind of synergistic military capacity, something far exceeding what any single nation could ever achieve on its own.
So it takes the key heavy lift and transport assets from member nations.
And it unifies them under a single, highly standardized command structure.
And we are talking about a real powerhouse of air transport here, aren't we? It's leveraging the strengths of key members.
It is. The assets mentioned are diverse, and they're very complementary. You've got the reliable Pakistani C-130s, the massive Turkish A-400Ms, the Saudi C-130J.
And crucially, the heavy strategic lifters.
The really big ones, the UAE and Qatar C-17 Globemaster fleets. Plus, you have Indonesia contributing its regional workhorse, the CN-235.
So what's the strategic advantage of blending all these different types of aircraft?
Well, this blending of strategic airlift, that's the C-17s and the A-400Ms, which are capable of moving heavy armor over vast intercontinental distances, with the tactical airframes like the C-130s and CN-235s.
Which can land on smaller, rougher airfields.
Exactly. They can deliver supplies to unimproved or smaller airfields much closer to the front lines. It creates incredible operational flexibility. But, and this is a big but, achieving this requires a tremendous amount of doctrine harmonization.
And that's the real challenge that this blueprint has to address, right? The procedural hurdles.
Mm.
How does the source suggest they overcome the complexities of getting all these diverse assets, flying under different national maintenance protocols, different regulatory bodies?
To operate seamlessly under a single command structure in a combat environment.
Right.
The blueprint, by creating the MAMC, essentially mandates a NATO-style level of interoperability for its airlift assets. This means unified loading standards, shared flight control procedures, cross-training of maintenance crews.
And a single shared logistics software system, I assume?
Yes, to track parts and availability across the entire fleet, it is a massive institutional undertaking. The goal is to make a Pakistani C-130 crew and a Qatari C-17 crew function as if they're part of the same operational wing.
And when you look at the combined capability metrics, the true strategic shot factor of the MAMC becomes apparent. The source claims it can move 50,000 troops, 500 armored vehicles, and 2,000 tons of supplies in under 48 hours.
Those numbers they represent an immediate and massive strategic shift. That is not a regional response capability.
No, the source is claiming intercontinental power projection at a speed that very few military alliances in the world could match.
Moving an entire division-sized force, complete with its combat vehicles and several days' worth of essential supplies across thousands of miles almost instantly, it neutralizes any advantage an opponent might gain through some initial aggressive action or a preemptive strike.
It just eliminates that crucial preemption window that strategists typically rely upon.
It slams it shut.
But even the MAMC, as powerful as it is, can't move the sheer volume and weight that would be required for a protracted high-intensity conflict. So where does the source say the truly heavy lifting happens, especially when you're dealing with the kind of logistical demands we've seen in major land wars?
That is the realm of the sea, and that is where the Maritime Deployment Force, or MDF, becomes absolutely essential.
So the MDF serves a highly specialized role.
A logistical and combat role. While it naturally contributes to fighting power, its core mission is really optimized for large-scale, heavy logistics. We're talking amphibious landings, getting thousands of tons of equipment from the ship to the shore.
And transporting the really big stuff.
The biggest, heaviest pieces of equipment that are simply too big or too numerous for even the MAMC to handle efficiently.
And the MDF has a critical dual mandate as well.
It does. It's responsible for securing supply lanes against interdiction, which is essential if external powers try to enforce a maritime blockade. And it also retains that humanitarian aid delivery role.
So it maintains a softer strategic presence.
By deploying hospital ships and mass supply vessels.
Yes. And I noticed the governance structure here. The command of the MDF rotates.
Yes, between Pakistan, Turkey, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia. And that detail, it speaks to the political necessity of shared ownership in such a high-value asset. It ensures buy-in and shared doctrine among the major naval powers in the alliance.
So this rotating command is key to harmonizing all the complex procedures.
Everything, from standardizing cargo manifests to ship-to-shore movement. It ensures the alliance truly speaks one maritime language.
So moving from the air and the sea, we finally turn to the arteries on the land. The Muslim Rail and Road Integration, or MRI.
Because speed in the air and sea is meaningless if your supplies just bottleneck the moment they hit the port or the airfield.
Exactly.
The MRI is the long-term, resilient solution for continuous supply flow. The source lists specific military-ready corridors that are designed for maximum speed and safety. They ensure ground assets can move just as quickly as the air and naval forces enable.
These are hardened supply chains.
Designed for continuous, high-volume military traffic. Specifically, we see the inclusion of the Pakistan-Iran-Turkey Railway, which is a crucial overland link that would have to be massively upgraded for military transport.
Then there's a Gulf Railway.
Linking the GCC economies rapidly. The North African Trans-Sahara Highway, which would create a hard backbone across a huge, often infrastructure-poor region.
And the Central Asian Silk Road connections.
Which integrates the entire logistics grid right into the heart of the continent.
But this ambition immediately introduces a challenge that the blueprint has to address, which is geopolitical friction.
A huge one. For example, relying on the Pakistan-Iran-Turkey Railway, particularly the section running through Iran, means the alliance is relying on a major non-member state for military-grade infrastructure access.
That seems risky.
It is. The blueprint must, therefore, mandate extreme security and political agreements to ensure that corridor remains continuously open for military use, regardless of any regional political shifts.
So this network is really about providing redundancy and resilience against both geopolitical friction and physical damage.
That's the key. If a critical port or airfield is damaged, the rail and road integration guarantees that supplies can still move fast, safely, and continuously across vast geographical distances. It connects all the SSHs and PPEZs together.
Creating a resilient circulatory system.
For the entire tricontinental alliance, it ensures that no single point of failure can cripple the entire operation.
Now we come to the Muslim Engineering and Logistics Corps, the MALC. And this is, it's arguably the most essential ground component.
I would agree.
Because in any rapid deployment scenario, especially one relying on the MAMC's breakneck speed, you cannot rely on the existing infrastructure being intact, or even existing at all.
You can't. You need a highly specialized elite force that acts as the immediate infrastructure repair and construction crew. The MALC is the true force multiplier on the ground.
So the MAMC can drop troops and equipment into a location in 48 hours.
But if that location is hostile or remote or its infrastructure is destroyed, those forces will stall. They'll bog down. The MLC has to arrive simultaneously to make that area immediately functional, defensible, and capable of receiving continuous supply.
So they operate in environments where infrastructure is either damaged by conflict or it's just plain non-existent.
Exactly. And their tasks are incredibly critical and time-sensitive. They define the operational window for ground combat.
We're talking about high-speed, military-grade construction and recovery. The source lists the ability to build bridges in hours, not days.
Which is essential for crossing rivers or ravines that could block the advance of your armored units. This requires specialized air-deployable bridging systems and extremely rapid construction techniques.
They are the Strategic Recovery Unit.
They are. They have to repair damaged roads and rail lines quickly to maintain that MRRI flow. And crucially, they have to restore basic services like electricity, field water purification, and temporary communication links.
Because without power and water, a modern combat force can't sustain itself for very long.
Not at all. Furthermore, they're responsible for immediately establishing field hospitals and mobile bases.
And that allows the combat units to rest, resupply, and treat casualties without having to retreat or rely on vulnerable, fixed infrastructure that's far from the front.
It dramatically reduces the tactical impact of casualties.
And their role isn't just defensive, is it?
No, not at all. They handle offensive mobility tasks that are critical for maintaining the MAMC's momentum. Things like dismantling obstacles and rapidly clearing minefields, which paves the way for the ground forces, the armor, and infantry to exploit the speed advantage that the whole logistics system created in the first place.
So the MLC is more than just construction workers. They are combat engineers operating at an unprecedented speed, trained specifically in rapid deployment techniques suitable for all these diverse climates and terrains.
They are the backbone of mobility. That's the perfect term. Because without them, the rapid deployment promised by the MAMC simply stalls in the mud, regardless of how fast the planes fly.
That is absolutely correct. The entire ability of the Alliance to execute these 12-hour or 24-hour response scenarios hinges completely on the MALC's capacity to open up lines of communication and sustainment immediately upon arrival.
This specialized corps ensures that the last mile of the supply chain, which is always the most dangerous and difficult part, is secure and functional instantly. Their speed is the guarantee of the Alliance's ultimate readiness.
So this blueprint moves beyond just abstract theory. It lays out specific crisis deployment scenarios, which allows us to see how all these SLG components might interact in real time.
Right.
These scenarios are designed to showcase the grid's ability to handle political, humanitarian, and military crises all at the same time across these vast distances.
Exactly. Let's start with scenario 1. A Kashmir escalation. This is a very high-tension scenario. It requires immediate, decisive external intervention where time is literally measured in hours before a situation can spin completely out of control.
And if we look at the mechanism described, it's a near-perfect integration of all the SLG assets reacting to a geopolitical flashpoint.
It is. The action involves Pakistani and Turkish airlift, so that's the MAMC, in full swing, demonstrating intercontinental troop movement.
And crucially, the Saudi fuel lines, the UFN, are immediately activated to support those air operations.
Which ensures the aircraft don't need to rely on external, politically vulnerable refueling hubs.
Meanwhile, the UAE transports specialized medical units, which are probably drawn from an SSH near the region. And the GCC rail corridors, that's part of the MRI, begin moving continuous heavy supplies from the Gulf,
Providing the sustained firepower that would be necessary for a long-term presence. And all of this is coordinated by the Alliance Intelligence Structure, the MIFC, ensuring every movement is synchronized.
What's truly remarkable is the stated response time, 12 hours.
12 hours.
The source claims this eliminates the window for an adversary to escalate or to seize ground before a stabilizing, overwhelming force can arrive.
The SLG effectively turns geographically distant allies into next-door neighbors. It minimizes the tactical advantage of speed for any potential opponent.
Okay, let's look at a humanitarian scenario next. Scenario 2. A Gaza humanitarian emergency. Here, the challenge isn't just speed, but accessing a politically fraught and potentially blockaded zone with vital aid.
Navigating complex security and maritime restrictions.
This activates the Maritime Deployment Force, the MDF, immediately. Egypt activates its Mediterranean fleet, leveraging its proximity and naval assets to secure the necessary corridors.
And Turkey deploys its specialized hospital ships, which, as we discussed, are crucial for delivering high-level care without burdening the already destroyed local infrastructure.
And the supply chain relies heavily on air assets and finance to get through the logistical difficulties. Pakistan airlifts essential medical supplies, probably staging out of the Cairo SSH or other forward bases.
And Saudi Arabia steps in to finance the entire logistics bridge, ensuring the operation isn't hampered by resource constraints or, bureaucratic funding delays.
And the blueprint projects that a humanitarian corridor opens within 24 hours.
24 hours.
This rapid maritime air response really demonstrates the dual utility of the SLG. It's built for war, but it's optimized for rapid relief. It uses the same assets, the MDF and the MAMC, to deliver aid and doctors instead of armor and ammunition.
The speed ensures aid reaches the population before the humanitarian situation becomes completely terminal.
Scenario 3 involves disrupting critical global trade, a Red Sea blockade. This requires immediate naval presence, sophisticated maritime security, and a rapid supply solution to counteract the economic fallout.
The response here is purely naval and supply focused. It's centered around securing one of the most critical global choke points.
Egypt and Saudi Arabia, with their strategic access points to the Red Sea, deploy naval escorts from their PPEZs. They're using pre-positioned destroyers and patrol vessels.
And Pakistan, with its deep-sea naval experience, secures the western sea lanes and provides deep-water anti-piracy or anti-interdiction capability.
And critically, the UAE provides the necessary supply tankers.
Leveraging the UFN's internal energy supply chain. This means the naval forces maintaining the security of the strait aren't reliant on vulnerable external bunkering facilities. The fuel supply is completely self-contained.
And the goal isn't just to respond, but to resolve the crisis quickly and decisively. The source projects that the choke point is reopened and secured in 36 hours.
That level of coordinated naval and logistical power to clear and secure a major global waterway in a day and a half is a potent display of capability. It's designed to dissuade future attempts at global economic disruption.
And that speed is only possible because the assets and the doctrine, the MDF, and the rotation of command are already unified and pre-positioned.
They aren't scrambling to assemble a coalition at the last minute. They are executing a pre-planned, rehearsed logistical maneuver under a unified command.
Our fourth scenario takes us into Africa, an African natural disaster. This tests the reach, the complexity, and the terrain resilience of the SLG across the massive African continent, where infrastructure is so often the limiting factor.
And this scenario involves multiple actors spanning North Africa and all the way to Southeast Asia. Algeria and Morocco deploy airlift from their North African PPEs. This handles the immediate transport of rescue crews and light supplies via the MAMC.
And Turkey sends in its engineers.
That's the specialized MALC, ready to instantly rebuild roads and restore critical infrastructure in an environment with little to no existing support.
And here we see Southeast Asia contribute. Malaysia activates humanitarian drones and specialized surveillance teams.
And drones are essential for mapping damage and delivering small, crucial items into inaccessible areas like collapsed villages or flood zones. This really demonstrates the seamless integration across the entire geographically disparate span of the alliance.
And the alliance response time is stated as an astonishing 8 hours.
8 hours. That incredible low figure shows the proximity advantage provided by the SSHs and PPEs in North Africa, combined with the instantaneous nature of the MAMC's airlift capacity from nations like Algeria.
It just proves the value of the tricontinental staging.
It turns what would typically be a weeks-long international aid response into an instantaneous regional mobilization.
Finally, Scenario 5. And this one revealed a core aspect of the alliance's internal security doctrine: an internal rebellion in a member country. This is a critical test of trust, political commitment, and the non-interference doctrine.
Indeed. The action described is the rapid deployment force arriving, backed by continuous supplier delivery and logistical support to stabilize the government.
And what's fascinating here is the implied promise.
The promise is, if a member state faces internal instability, the SLG guarantees that external stabilizing assistance will arrive and, crucially, be sustained indefinitely via this continuous, unbreakable supply chain.
So what does this reveal about the alliance's internal security doctrine? It suggests that rapid stabilization is achieved through guaranteed endurance.
Right. It removes the possibility of the rebel forces simply outlasting the initial stabilization attempt. The speed of the deployment via the MAMC, combined with the guaranteed supply chain via the SLG, ensures that the forces stabilizing the situation will never run out of fuel, ammunition, or necessary engineering support.
It makes internal stability a core logistical objective, not just a political one.
Exactly. The SLG is designed not just to project power externally, but to ensure that the very foundation of the alliance, its member states, remains robust and resilient against internal shocks. The speed and the guaranteed supply. They are key to achieving political and military stabilization when a rapid response is needed.
This deep dive into episode 29 of the Nuclear Umbrella has been incredibly illuminating. We've moved from the fragmentation of current logistics to the detailed architectural blueprint of the strategic logistics grid.
We have.
We've seen how this grid could transform geographically separated allies into an interlinked, resilient military structure that's capable of projecting power across 3 continents.
The key takeaways, I think, really reiterate the source's central claim. The strategic logistics grid is designed to make the alliance unstoppable, unbreakable, uninterruptible, globally mobile, and critically supply secure.
This system aims to remove every single friction point: geographic distance, incompatible equipment, external dependence, all the things that have historically doomed large-scale military operations.
We started by establishing that historical law that logistics is destiny, and the source's conclusion really hammers that point home. Wars are won by those who move fastest, not those who fire first.
And the SLG is fundamentally an infrastructure investment that's designed purely to maximize that speed advantage. It's aiming to shorten the decision windows for both its allies and its adversaries.
And that brings us to the final provocative thought. So, what does this all mean for the global balance of power?
It's a huge question.
According to this ambitious blueprint, we are witnessing the planned deployment of a system where the UMA moves like one army across 3 continents in perfect coordination. The ability to deploy 50,000 troops and their heavy equipment across thousands of miles in 48 hours is a colossal non-kinetic force multiplier. It's an entirely new dimension of strategic capability.
So the ultimate question for you, the learner, to consider is this: how much does pure infrastructure and logistics capability, the ability to move, sustain, and coordinate forces rapidly, how much does that truly outweigh technological superiority in modern conflict?
It's a great question.
When mobilization time is slashed from weeks down to hours, does the SLG's logistical dominance, its sheer capacity to ensure endurance and speed, does that become the ultimate decisive factor, overriding any marginal differences in weaponry?
The infrastructure dictates the strategy. A powerful logistical backbone often dictates where and when technological superiority can even be deployed and sustained. Without the SLG, the most advanced weapon is static. With it, that same weapon can be decisive anywhere on the map in less than 2 days.
Think about that difference as you process the true scale and the implication of the strategic logistics grid.
It changes everything.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We'll be back soon with the next crucial element of this strategic vision.